Welcome, friends and neighbors from all around the world, to the next project. This is episode 9. Wait a minute, it's the final episode of our Goodwill Fender Starcaster Extreme Modification Project Series project. We started out with a black and white Fender Stratocaster, basically, with a long list of problems. And together we walked through all those problems and resolved as much as we could and turned it into a pretty nice looking guitar. Let's take a look at how we got here as we continue the next project.
It seems that I just can't stop myself from doing work I don't need to do. Along with everything else that I've done to this guitar, I decided to wind my own pickups. Oh boy. Originally I was thinking going vintage in spec, low wind count, low output Stratocaster pickups from like the early 60s. Well, I left that idea at the door. Ordered a pickup kit from Tonecraft, which has flat top magnets in it. Well, that's not spec. I did use 42 gauge wire, so I think that's in keeping with kind of a spec. I wound 3 different wind counts for the pickups, bridge, middle, and neck. That's not vintage. What is vintage? I don't know. The Thought. That's about as close as I got to vintage. Oh, hey, I'm from the mid-60s, so I guess I'm vintage spec. Nothing like a soak in a hot bath of molten wax after a long day at the office. Here I'm giving these pickups a quick vacuum potting in a mixture of paraffin and beeswax. I don't remember the exact ratio, but it's hot, it's molten, it's getting into all the little nooks and crannies to get rid of some of that crazy squeal that these could produce. Maybe. We'll find out. And we are starting the long and winding road of assembling the guitar. There is a lot of things to be done. Here I've drilled a few holes for the boat jack, cleaned out the holes for the bridge bushings, opened up the holes for the potentiometers, and we're going to move on to the drill press, which I'm using to actually press in the bushings. And there is a warning that should go along with using a drill press as a press. You should put blocking underneath the table so you don't snap the table off your drill press when you use it, because it's actually a drill, not really a press. As the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention, and I had found myself needing to do a little more sanding down in the pickup cavities. That does not sound like fun at all. So I got thinking, and I used some Scotch-Brite pads and used some hot glue and melted some Scotch-Brite pads right to the end of a screw, put it in my drill, and I have an instant little sanding pad. It actually worked reasonably well. Kind of thought that it would come flying off and I'd scar things up, but the Scotch-Brite stayed put. I can still peel it off and reuse the screw if I need to. You know, a little more invention needed. I might be able to improve this. And honestly, somebody probably sells little pads like that. I don't know. Here I'm cleaning up a center line, trying to figure out where I need to drill the holes to mount the pickups into the body. Remember, no pick guard on this guitar, so the pickups mount directly into the body. Back to the drill press, drilling some oversized holes. These are bigger than the screws that will be going through the pickups. Jumping around a little bit, adding some shielding paint, some StuMac conductive shielding paint to the pickup cavities, and also the output jack cavity, and we'll be flipping it over here in a moment, and I'll paint the inside of the control cavity as well. With all the cavities painted with conductive paint, I did test for continuity, and there is a path from the pickup cavities into the output jack and into the control cavity, so we're all good there. Got good resistance. Here I'm pressing in some little brass inserts that are made for 3D printing. I decided they might work pretty well for this. I have them all pressed in, nice little brass inserts. Adding a little bit of super glue, wicking in around the inserts to help bond them into the wood that they're pressed into. And no real science there, just trying not to glue my fingers to the guitar. And there are the brass inserts and the holes before and after shielding paint, and with the inserts pressed in. Maybe one of the only pieces of original equipment will be the output jack. It's actually pretty good quality. I don't remember if that's the original boat jack, the housing. It might be the original, or it might be one out of the parts bin. Not sure. New screws. Adding a little conductive tape to the back of the control cavity cover, and also there was a piece running up the inside of the cavity where the cover will meet where the screw goes through. And look at this thing's pretty cool. I always forget that I have it, and this is so you can check the polarity of your magnets. It's black on one side and white on the other, and as you go over the magnets and the pickups, it will rotate and show you which side up on your magnet. Every time I pick up one of these switches, I'm reminded that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I have to look at it for a while to figure out how they work. So I've put together this little illustration. We have the blue wire going out to our volume pot, and the other wires we're cycling through would come in from your bridge pickup, your middle, and your neck, and it shows how the different positions allow the flow of the circuit to work. Now that we have our switch figured out and our 3 pickups in place, neck, middle, and bridge, we have a 5-way switch, volume and tone pot, and an output jack. We're going to run a bunch of ground wires, a wire from our volume to the output, from the switch to the volume, and from the volume to the tone. Run a neck, middle, and bridge wire to the switch, add a resistor, and bam, we're done. Full disclosure, I followed a diagram that had the input as lug 1, output as 2, and ground as lug 3. That sounded about right, and it worked. But it worked so well, it gave me a left-hand potentiometer. So I had to reverse things, so 1 was ground, 2 is output, and 3 is input. Now I have the other left, which is what I need. Running a ground wire right to the back of that new brass claw, and it's kind of cool. It's a non-solder setup. It has a set screw in it, so I ran some strand wire. Made a little holder for all the pieces. I'm using, a linear pot for the volume. I know that's not necessarily common. I'm using an audio pot for the tone. So yes, things aren't necessarily how the Fender Stratocaster factory would do it, but I do my own thing. Starting to solder a bunch of wires together, and as I noted, the diagram I originally used didn't exactly work for the way I ran my wiring. So once I got this all done, I did have to swap out a couple wires to get the rotation of the potentiometer working for right-handed me. this was kind of another one of those necessity mother of invention things. I was like, I have so many wires to solder to the back of the pot, and it's just going to be a big mess. Then I was like, why don't I create like a ground bus? So I found a little piece of brass plate, drilled some holes in it, soldered that directly to the back of the volume pot, and then soldered all of my leads right into this ground bus. My thinking is, if anybody ever needs to work on this and pull one pickup out or something, instead of desoldering a whole clump of wires, they can pretty much pick the one they want and remove just what they need. I'm sure somebody is selling that idea too. After everything's pretty much done, it's a good time to bench test, to make sure everything works before I actually put the neck and stuff on it. So this is when I find out that silly little volume pot is spinning in the wrong direction. Easy enough to fix. I think we've got just about all the important work done. Now it's time to start doing some fun stuff. Putting the springs in, the bridges in, tweaking the claw a little bit there, putting on some knobs. Tried the factory style Fender knobs. Didn't really think it looked that great with the guitar anymore, so I did swap them out for some Jackson style knobs, kind of like Telecaster knobs actually. Starting to string it up and doing some rough setup work on it, rough intonation, getting it tuned up and things. And I am working flat on the bench at this point. This is not final setup at all. It's just to get me in the ballpark so I can start refining it more easily. And this bridge actually is really easy to adjust the intonation on, especially once you put the bar in there. Use the bar to kind of dive bomb it and sneak your Allen wrench in there and make your adjustments without having to take strings off or anything. So it's really nice. Actually, it's easier to set up than, say, a Floyd Rose. But we have no locking nut on this guitar.